Well, it's been a week, to be honest, since we last spoke to Duncan Robertson, Loughborough's University School of Business and Economics, as we do every Monday, and we have done since way back in March, which seems like a long time ago. Not only has Leicester gone back into lockdown, but some pubs and hairdressers in the county have reopened. There's still lots to talk about data, and even which city could be next to have a Leicester-style lockdown. Duncan's with us again. Hi.
Good morning, Ben. Hi.
Now, look, since we last spoke, more data has become available, which I know that you were tearing your hair out over. What have you been able to crunch from it all?
Well, I think this is one where we can sort of play along together here. So I've written something up on duncanrobertson.com because, of course, radio is not great for displaying maps. So basically, there's been a lot of data, and there have been a lot of arguments about what data the public should have access to. And since we spoke on Monday, there's been basically a lot more information that's come out to the public, and I think also to Directors of Public Health. But anyway, looking at the public data, you can see why Leicester was pushed into lockdown, and that it had a very high rate of cases that were detected over a period of about a fortnight. And this has all come out in the Public Health England report, which I linked to on duncanrobertson.com, and it can tell you exactly what the analysis has been done by Public Health England. And obviously there are going to be some things that listeners will be very aware of. So the wards, North Evington, Belgrave, Stonygate, for example, are all sort of indicated there as areas which have had high number of cases. And of course, the thing about to get high number of cases, you obviously not need to do testing. And I think obviously what's happened over the last few weeks is the availability of tests has been higher. So you don't necessarily have to get into your car or get a home test. And of course, as you put more testing locations in, it can also kind of have this perverse thing that more people get tested and therefore the number of cases goes up. But I think what's been interesting is the data has been released, and we now get daily information of how many cases are within Leicester. Once again, I've linked to that. But you can see it, I'm optimistic about the number coming down. So on Thursday, Public Health England are going to issue another report of the cases around the country, and I would hope that Leicester would be on the trajectory coming down.
Based on the fact that we have re-locked down, or because that was what was going to happen?
Well, I mean, of course, it's impossible to answer that question, but it does seem as though, cases are coming down. Of course, there's a lag between, lockdown, which of course happened about a week ago, and then cases coming through. So it does look as though the cases are coming down independent of that lockdown, but of course they may be coming down faster. But it's not to say that the lockdown wasn't a prudent thing to do, because, of course, the trouble with this virus is if it gets a hold, it will take off. So, whether it's the right decision or not to lock down is a difficult one, but you can see why they do it. And there's a threshold that the Germans use of 50 cases per week per 100,000 people. And Leicester was 140 and 141 over a 2-week period. So you can see it was high in Leicester, basically.
Duncan, it's interesting because there's lots of talk about where next. The assumption being there is going to be a next, which I think we were working on under the sort of impression of last week. But actually, looking at those figures that you've put out, is that okay? Merthyr Tydfil, I think, is at the top, but that's all been around a particular food processing plant. Leicester stands out as way above everybody else, and I think all those other ones in the top 10, which are way below us. In as far as numbers go, their trajectory was already down. Is that the case?
Well, I think, as I say, this data has only been available for 2 weeks, and you make a very good point that just counting cases isn't enough. Because as you say, it might be all contained within a factory where it's much easier to manage. But what I think has been interesting about the Leicester situation, it does seem to be in the community, and Public Health England are very, make this point that it seems to be amongst, the working age population where it's spreading, as opposed to being in a care home, for example. So, and this is where, Directors of Public Health know what's going on in the country. And it's very, easy for me to kind of say what's going on from the data I have. But I don't have that real on-the-ground information that, you journalists and, Directors of Public Health have. And that's what's critical in getting this local understanding.
Look, as far as the understanding of the virus goes, where are we with that? I mean, I know that there's been raised talk about vaccines and so on. That's still a way down the tracks, isn't it?
I think it is, and certainly, for Leicester, it's not going to be out in the next couple of weeks or months. So I think people are still doing the research, they're still doing testing, they're still. I think there's mention of certain viruses being tested amongst populations, for example, in China, but we're still gathering data. And, one of the most important things is how safe are these viruses. So, they may reduce the incidence, but it may have other effects as well. So all this work's going on and people are working very hard to understand that.
Duncan, it's good to talk to you. We spoke a lot on the show last week with all kinds of people about data, and I know that you spend a lot of your life crunching data, and often data can seem like pretty dry, dusty stuff. But in this instance, it absolutely directly affects the lives of people living in Leicester.
It absolutely does, exactly, and the point is that's why you need reliable, accurate, up-to-date information, and I think that's been a little bit. Hasn't been ideal up until recently. And I think it's, once again, it'd be interesting to talk to the Director of Public Health to understand exactly what data they do have. But you're right, people are making big decisions about people's livelihoods on the basis of these testing numbers. And it's important that we understand that and people get to see it. So, as I say, on my website, you can see the source of information that are available to the public, and it's much better than it was, 2 weeks ago, certainly. So you can at least see what's going on.
DuncanRobertson.com, that's the one, isn't it?
That's right, that's the one, yep.
Duncan, we'll talk more. Thanks ever so much. Thanks for coming on again.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks.
Cheers, Duncan.